Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. I'm here in my home in lovely Ligonier, Pennsylvania. It's a snowy day today. I was up at the cottage last night, this morning, and it was super snowy there. It's actually more snowy up there than it is down here. It's a little bit warmer in town. And so, yeah, it's been interesting. I took some pictures of some of the flowers in around the yard today, and that kind of was the inspiration for today's kind of tutorial. It's been I'm gonna be honest with y'all. It's been a hot minute since I've made one of these, so we're gonna play it by ear, and if I mess up, then we're just gonna just roll with it. I see a couple of people have tuned in already. If you're watching, say hello and say where you're from. It's always nice when we can build community. um, and also, if you are so inclined, please like and share the video. William is always telling me that it's important to remind folks to do that. So I'm going to remind you all to do that. I see Pamela's watching. Hey, Pamela. Fran's watching. Hi, Fran. Yeah, so it's been kind of busy. I have some tentative good news, but I haven't gotten the all clear to share it. So I'm gonna wait before I do. But it's pretty cool. Um, and I think it's pretty neat. So I'll let y'all know when I can tell people. Oh, Teresa's watching. Hey, Teresa. Kathy's watching. Hey, Kathy. How far are you from where they get the sapphires in Montana? I always have this dream that we're going to go on this like epic road trip where we go around the country and dig for gems and minerals and look for sapphires and different things like that. And Montana's kind of been on my radar. Not right now. It would be in the warmer time, but one day maybe. Marianne's watching. Um, and she said, "Hey, AG Bead fam." So William and I were actually talking about this last night. We were talking about changing the Allegory Gallery Design Challenge group name officially to AG Bead fam, but we'll see. It seems like it's stuck. We were wondering if it would stick or not, because sometimes sometimes you'll say things and then it'll catch on for a couple of minutes. But we were wondering if it would stick, and if it did stick, then we would change it, because we've kind of been looking for a name for our group. Because there's been, we've tossed around different ideas, and some of our friends in the industry, they have such cute names for their kind of communities, and ours is kind of like very straightforward. And it's actually evolved since when it first started. When it first started, we did monthly challenges and design kits, and we still do them, but not kind of in the same way that we used to. It used to be a much bigger thing. And yeah, so that group was specifically for those challenges. And as it's kind of grown and developed, it's kind of turned into kind of a catch-all group for Allegory Gallery. And so, yeah, so we're thinking about officially changing it over. The thing is that if you change it, it's kind of hard to change it back or change it to something else later. And if we print up a bunch of like materials and stuff, then we kind of want it to stick. So we'll see. We'll see. Norma's watching. Hey, Norma. Cecilia's watching from Las Vegas. Hello. Francis, oh, teaser. It's true. For one, I don't know if I'm allowed to say anything yet. That's the biggest kind of thing. Um, because I haven't signed anything, and I like to make sure that everything's going to go through before I spill the beans. And then number two, if it doesn't pan out, I don't like to disappoint people. Mostly, I don't like to disappoint myself. So it's easier when you're like, oh, wow. I think it's one of those things where it's easier to manage disappointment if it's just you, or, your immediate circle, aka William. But it's harder when it's like more people, and then people ask you about stuff, and they're like, "How did blah 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 go?" And you're like, "Well, it didn't go out, it didn't work out." So you'll just have to wait. Hopefully, I'll be able to tell soon. But it's pretty cool. I'm excited if it works out. If it doesn't work out, I'm still gonna participate in this thing that's happening. And so yeah, we'll see how that goes. Gail's watching from South Dakota. I've never been to South Dakota. Um, Kathy says that they're in the backyard. Oh, good. Gumnut's watching. Hey, Gumnut. And then Kathy says, not really, but close. So one of these days we're going to make it out to, I'd love to go and find some sapphires and stuff. I always have this idea that I'm going to learn to like professionally cut stones. And there's a place not too far away from here that has classes, and they're not like ridiculously priced. I had to take, before the pandemic happened, I started kind of asking around about it. But then when that happened, that kind of, blew the water out of things because everything was shut down at the time. So, yeah, so I didn't do that. And I kind of am like, do I need another? See, that's one of my problems is I'm an omnicrafter. So I like to do all the things. And I definitely encourage people to do all the things. But there are only so many hours in the day. So I kind of have to narrow it down on what I can do. Um, and so, yeah, so we'll see if I get into stone cutting. But I can at least drill a stone and put it in a tumbler. So there you go. Kathy says, if you do come, go to Crystal Park and dig for crystals, Phillipsburg for sapphires. I have a friend that takes people to pay him for gold on his claim. Oh, that sounds exciting. I'll have to hit you up and get details about that if it becomes more of a reality, because I'd love to do that. I'm always interested in where things come from and how things are made. And it's always nice to go and like connect with the earth and um, look around for things. I'm one of those people where I could spend all day long, probably more than all day long, digging around on the beach looking for sea glass or in the tide pools. Um, so yeah. It's always when I go on the camera that I start to get where I'm about to sneeze. So that's fun. Cheryl's watching. Hey, Cheryl. June's watching. Hi, June. Pamela says, AG Bead Fam is cute. Like it. And Marianne says, I'm not that far from Montana. Maybe we'll have a meetup. We'll have a sapphire meetup. All right. So hopefully you all are having a good start to your week. Today is kind of a little bit of a break in our gemstone extravaganza. When I was in Tucson, I brought a whole bunch of gemstones. And so for the past couple days, we've been having gemstone lots, and so we tried not to overwhelm people because we've done it in the past where we just put everything out, and then for one, the live is like 5 hours long, and then people like, they're, they start to lose interest about 12 lots in. So, so we decided to kind of parcel it out a little bit and break it up so that we did about like 10 to 15 lots a day. And it seems to be working. Seems to be like people like it. If you missed any of those things, you can always catch it on the replay. I will recommend watching it on YouTube just because it is a little bit higher quality, and you can pause things and rewind, and it's just a little bit easier to do that. So if you are interested and you missed any of the days, I would recommend doing that. I try to find things that were a little bit different and unusual. Um, so hopefully y'all like that. And we still have a lot to go through. Um, and yeah, so we'll see. Um, Anyways, so if you missed any of those days, you can always watch them on the replay. Last week we did tassels with cones, and you can always watch that on the replay as well. And then we also did some sculpture. It's wild that it's all kind of, I don't know, seems like it's all kind of, it that was a while ago, but it's actually, it doesn't feel, it feels like I did it the other day, but I don't know. I'll have to look it up because it seems like I didn't do it that long ago. But then I was like, it must have been at least 2 weeks because I did the tassels last week. So, anyways, and one of the things that I really want to impress upon you all is that a lot of the things that we do in these little demos and tutorials are basics. So, and sometimes they're a little bit more in depth in there, like in the basics, but they are basics. And one of the things that you can do is combine a lot of these different techniques and kind of make them your own. So if you wanted to, for example, we did a little face sculpting tutorial. If you wanted to combine that with one of the tassels, that could be a cute idea. Or if you wanted to do, make some stamps using some polymer clay and then doing some pressings with that, you could incorporate that with some of your other projects and make beads that you could then wire wrap. So there's a lot of ways that you can take these different things. It's kind of like raw ingredients, and you take those raw ingredients and you do things to them, and you kind of play with the spices and the different techniques, and then you make something, your own recipes. So yeah, and if you do, please do share it in our group that we are currently deciding about the name, but that this is the current address on Facebook. I know some people aren't on Facebook, but that's kind of the easiest place for us to kind of create a group. So that's where that is. Um, all right. Harry's watching. Hey, Harry. Fran says, come to Colorado and dig for gemstone. Maybe. I used to go to Colorado for the shows in Denver. Um, and one of the publishers that I worked with was in Loveland. And so every once in a while, we would make it out there. And I miss it. It was a beautiful, beautiful part of the country. But life is a beautiful and abundant thing. Kathy says, if you do, I'll do some research. I have 20 acres. You can come camp out. I am not a camper, so we'll see. Uh, I would like to be one of those people, but I'm not. So maybe if there's like a Holiday Inn nearby, I'll stay at the Holiday Inn. Sandra's watching. Hey, Sandra. Gumnut says, Fran, I did that when I was in Colorado. I panned for gold and found a couple of garnets. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I found garnets in North Carolina, and that was pretty fun. Oh, and William said that if you're looking for the eye beads that I used in the face tutorial, they're now online. So if you're interested in those, you can go to allegorygallery.com. And if you go to allegorygallery.com, you can see the eye beads that I used, and you can see um, all of the gemstones up to last night, I think. I don't know if he got last night's in or not. Probably not, because it would be tonight. He's over at the cottage filming with Jen. Their filming day for their tutorials is on Tuesday, so they're currently up at the cottage. And I was gonna run up to the cottage and pick up some tools because I had a different project in mind. And then I realized we were down a car because our car got keyed a couple months ago, and so we took it to the dealer to get buffed out or whatever they do. Um, and so then I realized that I don't have a car. So, and it's snowing, so I'm not walking. And anyways, it'd be a kind of a far walk. I kind of have this idea that I will get a bike one day, but then I'm also not of the sturdy inclination like that. So then I'm like, that's like aspirational. You know how there's like practical and then there's aspirational. So that's like aspirational. And then in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe I'll buy up all the little farmland in between here and the cottage, and then I'll make a path that won't have cars. Um, and then yeah, so who knew? Who knew, William, that we're gonna be buying pathways in between? Because as if you go just straight directly out, it's not too far. But the way that you have to go, kind of you have to curve around. So I don't know. I'm free associating at this point. Um, let's see. Carmen's watching. Hey, Carmen. Marianne says, I've been to the Denver airport. Yeah, the Denver airport's pretty cool. The first time I stopped in the Denver airport, um, it was still maybe it was early and it was getting or early and it was dark or dark. It was late and it was dark. But anyways, it was dark. And then when I was driving around, there's this horse, this great big blue horse with glowing red eyes. Um, and I was like, what's this? So that was a fun introduction to that area. Karen's watching. Hey, Karen. Um, Marianne says, I thought so too, and bought some really nice cards. Oh, good. William said last night's lots will be online tonight. Oh, good. And Gumnut said that she bought a key ring. Oh, good. William says, I would love pathways. Yeah, it's I think about it sometimes, you know. Gotta plan the empire. But then on days when it's like super snowy, I'm like, maybe we'll just like renovate the garage and turn that into my studio. And then I just have to walk to the backyard. The cottage isn't that far, it's about 10 minutes drive. But when I was going last night, it was really late and they hadn't salted the roads yet. And it was snowing really. You know, it felt like that opening scene from Star Wars where they're like all the lights are shooting at your face. Um, or the stars are like zooming by. So it looked like that. And then so I was like, maybe we'll renovate the garage and turn that into my studio. Um, but I don't know. I love the cottage still, but it's definitely would be easier to go to the backyard as opposed to drive in the snow. Diane's watching. She says, hi from sweet smelling Arizona. In the midst of citrus tree bloom, orange and grapefruit trees are smelling wonderful, but eyes are burning. Oh no. I grew up in Florida, and we grew up in an old orange grove house. It was built in the 1920s in the middle of an orange grove. And kind of where I grew up, all of the subdivisions grew up around this property. And so there were still old orange trees on the property. And so I spent many a time playing in the old orange groves. And that scent of the leaves and the flowers and the bark is like burnt into my memory from my youth time. And I just think about it and I can smell it. So yes. All right. So let's get down to business. How about it? Like I said, if you didn't catch the very opening of this, it's been a hot minute since I've made one of these. So we're gonna see if I can conjure it up. William says the garage is too small for you. We'll just add another story, right? And then we can have like a land bridge, like at the airport, or maybe a slide, as long as we're entertaining realms of fantasy at this point. Um, yeah, so our neighbors, they just added an addition to their house just a couple doors down, and it looks super nice. I mean, I haven't been inside, but from the outside, it looks super nice. Um, but yeah. So, anyways, let's flip this around and then we'll get to it. So you'll see the ceiling for a second. All right. Um, Marianne says Atlanta's moving sidewalks. I don't know anything about that. But we do have a lot of sidewalks on our, but we're not in Atlanta. All right. So for today's project, I have this brass wire and 24 gauge. We're going to use this because that's the only wire apparently that I have in this house, and I didn't grab any last night. So this is a little bit of a stiffer wire. If I was gonna do this like for real, I probably would use a dead soft copper wire, or if I wanted that gold look, I would use a bronze wire. Brass is a little bit harder, so it will be a little bit more tricky. So just keep that in mind when you're selecting your wires. If you want to use craft wire, you could definitely use craft wire. Those come in all different colors, and it's very soft and very supple and very easy to manipulate in a sculptural way. Um, and the one thing that I will say is that if you pick a craft wire that has a plasticized coating, you cannot use this with polymer clay. Now, I'm not saying that you can't do this, but if you do have a wire that has a coating that's like a plastic coating, it will burn in the oven. For today's project, we're not using this with polymer clay, but if you did want to do a mix and match technique where you took some of the things from the other tutorials and incorporated them, then then you can. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Maybe if we have time and if people want, I'll do a demo of something that I'm thinking about. Are you all interested in that or no? Oh, and then speaking of eyes, I started organizing my eye collection last night. and that was kind of fun and interesting. And I'm thinking about, I don't know if anybody would be interested in this or not, but I'm thinking about having a kind of a creature makeup session where I bring all different kinds of things, like different eyeballs and stuff, and maybe faux fur, and we'll have like and polymer clay, and we'll have like a creature feature day where we kind of make different critters. But that would be mostly for local people, because it's harder to share that kind of stuff when we're so far apart. I don't know. Maybe I'll make kits. I don't know. I don't have enough stuff to make a kits for to send out, you know? I have like enough to make like a few kits, but I don't know. We'll see. All right. Marcy's watching. Hey Marcy. Karen's says, yes, please, interested in all that you do. Oh, good. All right. So I've got this wire. We'll need something to cut the wire. And I've got some round nose pliers and some chain nose pliers. I like tools, they make your life a lot easier. Um, so use your tools and don't hurt your fingers. Um, Even though this project we're going to be using our fingers a lot. I also have some check glass, some vintage check glass beads that I think these are in one of the kits from Kitapalooza. If you missed any of those are all posted. So go to the website, that's allegorygallery.com. Check out the kit section, and the Kitapalooza kits are all on the top, or close to the top. Some of them are sold out, and then some of them, I made a lot of them, so they're not sold out. But yeah, check those out. There's a ton there, and we have a lot of different things on offer. And I actually have to confess that I was digging around, and I was starting to kind of organize things for new kits. Um, and I know that's kind of crazy because we just finished Kitapalooza and made 50 kits. And then I'm always like, oh, this is so much work. This is so much work because it is a lot of work. And most of the nights I've been up at the cottage kitting things up. So the way that we make those kits for Kitapalooza is like I'll kind of hunt or gather a bunch of the supplies and kind of make them into little collections. And if you ever followed Heather Powers back in the day, she used to do this thing called the Muffin Tin Challenge, and she'd take a muffin tin and go around and kind of put things with like things or combinations, and then what you had to do is you took that muffin tin and you worked your way through the tin and made projects based off of what you kind of gathered. When I do it, I kind of do the same thing, except I have big buckets, big plastic bins, and I fill up those bins with the different beads for each of those. And I make piles, and then I make kits from those piles. Now, the thing is, though, and then I make one so that William can show it and photograph it and add it online. And then the tedious part happens where I have to um, count everything and bag everything and get that sorted. So that kind of takes a lot of time and is tedious, but I still like it. It's a lot of fun to kind of pick things, and I try to do things that are gonna push people out of their comfort zone or inspire them. And I really try to imagine what the designs will look like when I create those things. So yeah. So, anyways, the current kits that we have from Kitapalooza are all listed on the online. They've been shipping. So Barb, she came at 7 o'clock this morning and came in early. And usually she doesn't come in on Tuesdays, but she wanted to catch up on shipping and get as much stuff shipped out as possible. So she popped up and I was like, "Oh, hello." It was dark and early still. Luckily, I had the heaters going, so it was nice and toasty roasty in there for her. And at that point, I was getting kind of delirious. I was like, I need to go home now. She must think that I don't like her because I'm always leaving when she's coming, but usually it's because we have very opposite kind of schedules. Anyways, here you go. Um, Mercy says, "Your kits rock. If the money tree had not dropped its leaves, I would be shopping." Well, hopefully, they'll still have a couple for you available somewhere. When the tree becomes more lush, we're also talking about doing it seasonally. So we'll do one in the spring, one in the summer, one in the fall, one in the winter kind of thing, so that we can um, make a little bit more tailored um, experience, I guess. We do one for Halloween, and that's a lot of fun. I love the Halloween kits. I have to admit, they were some of my favorites to put together. Like this batch, if you're not really into green, there's a lot of green in the kits that I just put together. Not all of them, of course, but there is a ton of green. So if you're not into green, then you can kind of skip out. Um, and that's probably not the best thing to say when you're trying to make money off of kits, but I'm being honest. Um, Harry says, I made a strange bead today, alligator leather folded on the skin lines into a square profile and rectangular in length. That's cool. I bet it looks neat. Marianne says, sounds interesting, Harry. Pick. Um, Amanda's watching. Hi, Amanda. Harry said, no picture yet. I just glued it up, maybe tomorrow. That's really cool. There's a couple different people who have been incorporating fish leather. I don't know if you all have seen that yet, but it's kind of neat. And there is some faux leathers that they're doing embossing to them so that they look like different animal leather, but they're not. In case you don't like the use of leather, because I know some people get weird about it. Uh, Marianne says, "I think my money tree died." Well, Bonnie is watching. Hey, Bonnie, we're gonna be making a pendant today with wire and beads. All right, so let's get down to it. Otherwise, y'all are just gonna be like, what is he even talking about now? All right, so I've got this brass wire. I'm going to take off about 12 inches of wire or so. Let's see how close. It does help to have a ruler. I'm gonna give myself a little bit extra. And so if you have a ruler, it's always nice. At the cottage, I have different marks. Like I made a lot of the tables at the cottage, so they're just like plywood and stuff. So I just put little marks with a ruler and stuff so that I don't have to break out the ruler if I lose my tape measure. I always have it there. It's kind of I got that trick from when we used to go to the fabric store and with my mom, and they have rulers that are built into the table so that when they're cutting the fabric, they don't have to search around for anything. It's already built in. All right. Karen says, can you please check your email for me? I'm currently online, so I can't, but right now, but I'm sure William can do that and get back to you. Today is his other day, his other work day. So, yeah, so he should be coming home after the filming with Jen. So afterwards, but yeah, usually he checks it every day and replies. So if you're not getting through, then that's unusual. Um, Harry says, I had to buy shipping supplies and they showed up today. Four giant 750-foot rolls of bubble wrap and 350 boxes. Took an hour to put it all away. Oh my. We just got a bunch of shipping materials and we actually should if I had the car today, I would probably go by the store because it's probably sitting on our stoop. Um, all right. So, anyways, here we go. I'm gonna cut this off and get this going for y'all. So these ones, I believe they are. Um, these are about 6 millimeter round Druck check glass, but depending on what you use, it'll change the look of your creation. So depending if you use like these dagger beads or gemstone beads, it'll change up the look. All right, so I've kind of loosely formed this wire. It's about 14 inches of wire, and I bent this in half and made it into a U. I don't want to make a hard crease in it just yet because if you do, you're kinking up the wire and you can break your beads. And especially when you're using a harder wire like this brass wire, it's a little bit stiffer. You don't want to do that. All right, so I've strung this on and I've loosely placed it in the middle, and then I'm going to cross over my wires and create kind of a little rabbit ear effect. All right, and then I'm going to loosely twist it. Now, if you're concerned about it breaking, you can always take your round nose pliers and kind of gently put this in here like this and hold it. And then that will help keep it from cracking your stone. Because sometimes if you do this, you can crack your stone inadvertently. All right. And you don't want to do that, or your glass. Now I've started twisting it and I've twisted it down about an inch of down. All right. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to now take this wire and bend it up. It doesn't matter which one, just as long as you've got one. And then I'm going to kind of guesstimate, about an inch or so. Whenever you twist the wire, it will shorten your wire. So if I want this to be half an inch long, I'm going to want to put an inch because it's going, when I twist it, and the more I twist it, the more it's going to kind of eat up that wire. So, um, don't if you want it to be, it's not going to be like a 1-to-1 ratio, it's like a 1-to-2. And also if you twist it more, it will compress more. But the other thing that you have to be mindful of is that if you do that too much, what can happen is if you twist it too much, it can break. So don't over twist your wire. If you kind of are in tune with your materials, you'll kind of feel it and you'll be able to tell when it's kind of getting too fatigued. So I'm stringing on another one of these beads here, and I'm going to open this up a little bit so that it fits nicer. And then I'm going to go in here and I've got it like this. All right. And then I'm going to take this and do that bunny ear again. And I'm going to try to get it so that it's in the center right here and position this little crossover where it's in the center of the bead. It doesn't really matter. I just think aesthetically it looks a little bit cleaner. It's more purposeful like that. So I'm going to take this and hold this, and then I'm going to have to kind of do a little bit of a different twisting technique. The other time I was kind of twisting it like a bread tie. And this way, I'm kind of twisting it where I'm taking this wire and folding it and wrapping it around. But then once I hit this part where it hits the stem, I can bread tie it a little bit. And that will also tighten up any kind of looseness in the wire, right? And I'm going to take this and I'm going to put this, I'm going to fold this up, or actually I'm going to twist it a little bit, about a quarter of an inch or so, and then twist it up. All right. Oh, Amanda says, after that talk about Etsy shop sales, I got 2 in. Oh, good. Good job, Amanda. I'm proud of you. Bunny says, antenna for a butterfly. Yeah, you could definitely do that if you wanted to. So what I'm going to do is basically repeat the step that I just did, where I'm gently creating a U shape and stringing on a bead. And if it doesn't want to go all the way, remember you can open up that wire and nestle it down a little bit closer. And then we're going to cross over and make sure that wire is kind of positioned in the center of that bead, like so. And then I hold it with the pliers. And notice I'm using the round nose pliers and not the chain nose pliers. And the reason why, if you have really sharp needle nose pliers, and that may work, I have noticed that these are a tad bit sharper in the point, and so it makes it a little bit easier to do that. All right. So I'm going to loosely wrap this, and like I did in the second kind of branch, and then I'm going to take and bread tie twist it and twist it a little bit more. All right. And then I'm going to cross this back over, and I'm going to wrap it, twist it a little bit, about a quarter of an inch or so, and then take the one that I used from the previous one. So I'm alternating between different sides. So if I do this side and on this leg of wire, then for this one, I'm going to use this leg of wire. So I just finished this one, so I'm going to move to this one. And the reason why it's good to alternate that is because if you don't alternate as you go, what's going to happen is you're going to use up one length of this really fast. Now, I guess there's a way of figuring it out where instead of starting in the middle, you start, you start kind of closer to one end. But for me, it's just easier just to alternate every so often. And then I can kind of, it's a little bit easier for me. So I'm not going to go as far. Maybe it's going to be 3/4 of an inch, because I want this to kind of have I'm going to work in an odd number. So I have 3 right now. So I'm adding the 4th right now. And then this one, that one bead was super excited to be on. So we'll put this on deck for number 5. And there you go. All right, now remember what I said about opening it up a little bit so it nestles right in there? See how that slipped in there real nice? So like this is how it is right now, and then I'm just gonna open it up and it just slips right into that little elbow crook. And I'm gonna go over and repeat what we just did. I've noticed that in nature, there's a lot of repetition. So, when I'm working with nature-inspired things, I try to build that repetition into my pieces, because if I'm trying to look at replicate a natural form and I'm going to derive inspiration from a natural form, that's what I'm going to do, right? And I always think it's good if you're going to work on something to uh, to have references while you work, right? All right, so this short wire is the one that I just used. So the next wire that I'm going to be using is the longer one, obviously. I'm going to wrap this around about a quarter of an inch or so, and then I'm going to create that elbow 3/4 of an inch. And right now it doesn't look like much, but we're going to add this bead on, and then I'm going to twist this around and cross that over, and then do that again, repeating the same step that we just did. And I'm going to keep an eye on how much wire I have left because I'm starting to run low and I don't want to run out. Now, at this point, this wire is getting short. So one of the easiest things you can do is use your pliers, your chain nose pliers, and use that to wrap your pieces. Now, this is kind of tricksy because you don't want to accidentally kink up your wire, because if you kink up your wire, it can create weak spots. Not only does it look a little bit kind of rush, but it will create weak spots, and then it'll be problematic. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this off to the side, the shorter one, and I'm going to work primarily with this longer strand. So I'm going to get my round nose pliers. I'm going to go up about um, 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to start wrapping this around with my round nose pliers, and I'm going to do a double loop. All right, so it will look like this. All right, and I'm going to insert this back in here so it acts like a mandrel. I'm going to get this kind of out of the way. You can always bend it back in place if you want. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and create a wire wrap coil. Now, if you had more wire, you could do like a fancy, like a decorative scroll or do something like that. But right now, I'm just kind of getting this tacked down so that I can, so it doesn't come loose. All right. And I'm going to go and flip this over to the other side and press it like this and wrap it around like that, just so that the bail that I just made is even. And then while this is still kind of on the while this is still kind of on in play, this wire here, I'm going to take that and I'm going to wrap this around as well. Now this one will, since this is connected to this wire kind of budding branch, it's going to want to swing up, so you kind of have to take charge of it and manipulate it in such a way that you can get it so that it wraps without twisting that. Because again, this wire is a more fragile wire. It's 24 gauge wire. So it is a thinner wire. So you can't work it too much, because if you work it too much, you can snap it. So whenever you're working with wire, like I've seen people, they really get into their wire and they really kind of get in there and manipulate it a lot. And I think that that is one way of doing it, but you can also use a little bit of finesse and that gentle motions and kind of listening to the metal and making sure you're not fatiguing the metal or kinking it up will create projects that you can, you know, you won't have as much frustration if you kind of just go about this more gently. Sometimes you have to, instead of, using all your force and will, you can kind of just gently go about it. All right. June says, I use this technique to make hair jewelry for my daughter's wedding. Oh, good. All right, so you've got this like this. You can leave it like that, but where the kind of magic happens is when you start manipulating the branches so that they are a little bit. You also want, okay, so if you want this to strengthen up and get a little bit more sturdy and add a little bit more strength to this branch, this is where the magic happens. So you'll take, wherever there's the longer one, you'll take the shorter one and use that to wrap. All right. And then I'm going to repeat this, that kind of wrapping, and it's going to strengthen up your branches, and it's also going to make the pendant a little bit more compressed. All right. And I'm going to do this one, this bottom one first. And if you need to, if you're having issues where the wire is wanting to move, you can always grab it with the pliers and use the pliers to help you with your project. Because it does, it's steel. And steel, I don't know if y'all knew this or not, but steel is a little bit harder than flesh and bone. So, yeah. All right. And then I'm going to take this one and hopefully I'm not going to snap it because I kind of feel that it's kind of borderline fatiguing. And I'm going to wrap it. Just twist it. A lot of this is like bread tie twisting. So if you can do a bread tie, then you can do, oh, I did the opposite. Okay. All right. So the next thing to do is if there's any areas where it's kind of lumpy or wavy gravy, like right here, there's a part where the wire is kind of twisted up. I'm going to just kind of tap it down with my pliers. And if I need to do an extra wrap, I can do an extra wrap. And this is also a design opportunity. So if you want this to be on the same plane and have it be flat, just flatten it out. If you want it to be more sculptural, look at it from different angles and then plot how you're going to do it. So if you want it to be a little bit more sculptural, I'll bend this like this. And then I'll come up here like this and bend it and give it a slight curvature. If I need to use my pliers, I can always use my pliers. And it always helps to have reference. So if you are really into botanicals, get some twigs and start examining those twigs and looking at them a little bit closer. And then you'll start seeing all kinds of different things that you may have not noticed before. All right. And so that's how you make this budding branch wire pendant. Now, if you use a little bit heavier gauge wire, of course, you'll have a little bit more of a visual impact. And so, I don't know. I don't know if you like that. Do you like that? Or does it look yuck? So, I like it. And you can make this as dramatic as you want. Or so if you wanted to add another branch, you could add sprigs to this and make multiple sprigs. June was talking about putting it in like a hair accessory. So instead of making that bail, just wire it onto like a comb, and then you can slip it in or a clip, and then it kind of will look kind of fantastical. So there you go. There's that. And now, if you wanted to incorporate this into a sculptural element, because I had mentioned that, do you want to see the sculpture, or do you want to make a sculpture together, or are you like, oh, I'm done now? Because we've been going for about an hour. So I'll leave it up to you. I'll do a sculpture if you all want to do a sculpture based off of this technique. Susan says, yes, please. So Susan so far is the only one who wants to see it. If you all want to, these would make a really cute pair of earrings, by the way. And you can also, if you wanted to, you can take and wrap the wire some more and reinforce it. Cut off another piece, hook that on, and kind of strengthen it up a bit if you wanted to make it a little bit. Paula says yes. Bonnie says sure, why not? Norma says yes. Amanda says yes, I'd like to see how you do that. All right, so I'm going to make a couple more of these. And once you see it kind of in action, it goes a little bit quicker. And instead of kind of explaining it every step of the way. All right. Harry says yes. Vanessa says yes. Oh, good. Yeah, it goes pretty quick. And you can also, if you wanted to do leaves, you can also do leaves. How you do leaves, I'll show you how to do a leaf in a second. All right, so I've got this situation. I'm going to hold this firm. I'm going to go down about 1/2 inch or so. You can always tighten it up. Take the longer of them. Now, if you wanted to do a leaf, what you would do is take your round nose pliers and create a shape like so, a loop basically. And then Amanda asked, is that 24 gauge wire? Yeah, it's the 24 gauge wire that we used in the other project the other day, because I didn't bring any from the cottage last night. All right. So I have this loop, and you'll be like, what's that? What kind of leaf is that? And how you can make that into a more leaf-like shape. There's a person on Instagram, and she takes these kind of loop shapes and she dips it in paper pulp and then creates these really cool kind of paper leaves that she then dips in resin, and they're really fun. She makes little cells out of wire like this and then dips them in. So what you will do is you will bend this in half and create a sharp point, and then wherever you want the base of the leaf to be, you'll hold that stationary and do a twist and lock it in. And then you'll take these other pliers, and it helps have 2 chain nose pliers, which I just happen to have. And open it up. All right. So there's how you get that kind of leaf shape if you want that leaf. And if you want, just twist it in. And then you can then go back over there and do this where you wrap this around a little bit closer, and you can get that to be you can add more to it. So if you wanted to have more leaves, you could go in and take the wire and you create these kind of like lobes, and then you basically do the same thing. Now the reason why we crushed it is to create that point on the leaf. So if you want to do that, you can do that. And it creates a little bit of a crisper point. Now you do have to be careful, because if you overdo it, you can create it where it's a breaking spot. So you just have to kind of be in tune with your materials and not overdo it, because otherwise, then you have something broken, which it's not the end of the world. It's just a little bit of wire and some beads. You can always cut it off. It's not like it's precious. Now, if you're working with like gold or something, then I would be maybe a little bit more careful. But we've got this Cheapo Depot hardware store brass wire. So I'm not going to be, it's not the end of the world if I break the wire. And this is really kind of meditative and fun, in my opinion, where you can just build these forms, these sculptural forms. And I don't know, I kind of think it's fun. Bonnie says good wire for starters. Yeah, if you're trying out a new technique, I always recommend using a base metal wire, and get the muscle memory built in. And then if you want to do something like sterling wire or gold filled or something like that, you can always go back and do it again, but do it in a precious metal. And then that way you're not inadvertently using up all your good wire, because then it adds pressure. Then the stakes are real, right? You can't I don't know, I get a little bit, I'm not as nervous as I used to be. I would be like real frugal with my wire, and I would be like, oh no, I can never waste not even one centimeter of wire. Nowadays, if I make a mistake, I just melt it back down, so it's not the end of the world, even with a more precious metal. But I hate to waste stuff, so that's where I get kind of weird about it. Now you can see I didn't position this over the center of the bead, and so it's doing this wonkadoodle thing where it's going off to one side. It's not the end of the world. I can fix it, but that's what happens when you don't do the pre-positioning first. And I mean, it's not the end of the world. Again, it's just a little thing that in theory it might be too close for somebody to see. If they're that close, then they're real close. All right. So here you go. And I'm going to build the bail now for this. And it's not going to be, I'm not going to really spend too much time on this, the bail part, because I am going to embed this. So I'm just going to create that loop and twist it. It's basically so that be throwing pliers around like they throwing stars or something. But basically so that when I build this into the armature or put this in, I'm not going to, it's not going to be like stabbing out of the clay. All right, and then I'm just going to go back through and twist things up and make it a little bit, thicken up that base stem. Bonnie says, I have some really pretty Christmas ornaments made like this. They made mistletoe. Oh, good. Yeah, I think it's an old, if I'm correct, there's a thing about French wire flowers. And they use seed beads in them with them, and they do some really beautiful things with the wire and seed beads. I believe it's a French technique. Sometimes I come across the flowers that are already pre-made at estate sales, and I'm like, oh, I just cut that up and use my own stuff. All right, so I'm gonna make a couple more of these sprigs. And again, depending on how you do it, it'll change the look. And right now it kind of looks chewed up. Like this one, that looks chewed up a little bit. I'm going to tuck that in. Again, it's not going to matter a whole lot because I'm going to embed that in the clay. But if you want that to be like a little bit more structural, you can do it like that. It's kind of and the more you do and bunch it up and stuff, the more impressive it looks. It kind of is like doing those grapes. Who remembers those grapes, those glass grapes? We were just at a gallery in Truth or Consequence in Mexico, and they took those glass grapes and they put them on a chandelier, and they looked amazing. So that's kind of the idea. All right, so I'm going to do it again. I'm not going to go too hog wild because I'm sure y'all got other stuff to do besides me looking at me wrapping wire around. But in case not, here you go. Bonnie says those glass grapes are collectible again. I know. We saw how much some of the people were trying to charge, and I was like, I had to miss the boat on this. Because they were like $400 for the cluster of grapes, and I was like, do what? Which, if that's your jam, go ahead. But in my world, they used to couldn't give them away in the old times. All right, so I'm going to hold this down as it's positioned in the center and then twist it. And if you started with a longer piece of wire, you could do more things. The thing is if you have too much wire, it can become dangerous because the wire, it kind of flops around, and you don't want to accidentally put your eye out, Christmas Story style, where you don't want to get issues with that. All right, so I'm gonna do a twist, and then I'm gonna do another twist. So what have you all been doing? I know Harry made his alligator cue or box bead. What have y'all been up to? Anything interesting and fun? We kind of took it easy. I took some needed R&R time over the weekend. I mean, I still work, but I took some much needed time to kind of rest and recover. That's kind of one of those things where I always I'm a little bit of a workaholic, and that's not necessarily a great thing, but when you enjoy what you do, it's kind of hard sometimes not to work. But one of the things that I realized, and I'm becoming more and more in tune with this, is that if you don't take time to rest, your body will take the time to rest. And then usually it's when you need it not to be resting. So it took a little bit of time this weekend to kind of rest and recover, have some generational trauma, panic attacks, and carry about life. Lennis says, looks like doll eyes. Yeah, there's a plant called doll eyes. It's poison, by the way, but it's really beautiful. And it's got these bright kind of pinkish stems and white berries. And I think it's pretty cool. It does look like you know, that somebody plucked the eyes out at the doll factory. All right, again, if you skip the step where you kind of center it, then what's going to happen is it's going to create that weird kind of, it's not going to be in the center and it's going to stick out kind of weird. So just be mindful that if you skip steps, it's going to look like it, which I did. So we finished, I think it was the season finale of The Last of Us. That was pretty good. I fell asleep during it though, so I might have to rewatch it. Cindy says, I was at my granddaughter's school for field day. It's where the kids do all kind of sports. Then when done, they had snow cones. Oh, they had snow cones. That's nice. Cindy says, what are we making? This. We made this. And now I'm going to work on a sculpture because folks said that they didn't mind hanging out. Amanda says, I haven't made much, but I started wire wrapping beads because I couldn't settle on making something. I'll eventually bring them together, I think. Oh, good. And Cindy said that she shared and liked. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, we always appreciate when folks help spread the word and they push the like buttons and different things like that. I'm not really good about reminding people about that. William's much better at reminding people. But he says, oh, but all the famous YouTube people tell people to do it. So I should be more active about doing that. But also I kind of feel weird because sometimes we kind of just like free talk. And so it's not necessarily like, I don't know, like, I don't know. I guess it's one of those things that I love about our community, but at the same time, if you're looking for like straight up instructional material, it's kind of like when they do the recipes and then they talk for about 10 pages and then they finally get to the recipe. So I don't know. I guess I should probably be quiet now. But there you have the inner workings of my brain. And also, if you want them to be closer, I'm going to do one where like this cluster is a little bit more clustered and not as spread out as this one. So when you're doing that, just look at if you're like, I don't know if a real plant goes like that. Look at real plants and learn from nature and studying nature. So if you want something that has that tighter structure, just look at different plants. Now, if you wanted to, you could definitely change up the look of this by, like I said, swapping out the beads. I don't know if we still have the trunk show from Linka. It's actually her birthday today. Happy birthday, Linka, if you're watching. Hopefully you're not watching on your birthday and you're doing something exciting. But if you saw that, she did a really beautiful interview about Chuck Glass and her life in the beading industry. And we had a bunch of Czech glass leaves and flowers from her. And so if you swapped out the leaves, then you don't even have to make your own leaves. You can just use Czech glass leaves and then it will be done. All right. So this is going to be another one that we embed. So I'm not going to be too fussy about it because it's not going to even show. And it's actually better if you don't have a super tight coil in the embedded part, because if you have a very tight structure and it's really like super super tight, the thing is that if you then pull it, it can pull right out of the clay. So having kind of a voluminous kind of shape and having those kind of places where the clay can meet the clay and kind of grip on, it will help make your structure a little bit more sturdy. Um, Cindy says, now I'm here on YouTube. Oh, fun. Marianne says, makes me think of bittersweet fruits and flowers at the same time on the vine, also poisonous. Yeah, there are some really great um, like pressed Czech glass shapes in fruits and vegetables. A lot of times it's vintage. Um, but if you get those, that could be a really cool, like the grapevine kind of look. You could do one with grapes. Um, Speaking of glass grapes, Harry says, I cast several clay items today and made a textured vase slab built. That's cool. Bonnie says, you should be you. Authentic is believable. Oh, good. Susan says that would look great with glass leaves. Yeah. Lena says I totally stocked up on the Czech glass leaves and flowers during the trunk show. Oh, good. Marianne says I was attempting with the macrame piece Jen showed on Saturday's tutorial. Only had a slightly larger hemp cord, didn't really work out the same. So I ordered the same size of cord so I can try it again. Oh, good. Yeah, hopefully people enjoyed those because it was, I thought it was really good. Amanda says those beads look really good with the gold wire. I agree. All right, so we've made these little pieces. Now, what do you do with this? Now, if you have a longer base, you could just twist these together and stick it in clay or whatever and call it a day. You can have your little tree of life. You could use these for earrings. So if you wanted to just add an ear wire, you could add an ear wire and call it a day. Or you can layer them up. I think that looks really fun. If you have long hair, that would get super tangled up in it, but you know, or put it on, string it up, and make into a really cool necklace. I might do that if I find a couple hours of free time. I might make a great big huge necklace where it's all these different beads on these kind of branches. Now, this is also one of those techniques where I've only used 5 beads and I still have a lot of beads left to go. So it's a little, you can do a little with a lot or do a lot with a little. This is also good if you have like mystery mixes and you don't really know what to do with them. You can do kind of these organic, kind of branchy shapes, and that can be good. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to revisit what we did the other day and do kind of a sculptural technique. And we'll make a creature. How about it? We'll make a creature. All right, I'm going to grab the clay since I didn't really prepare for that. All right, set change, y'all. All right, so I made this face. Let me see. I made this face. I didn't bake this yet. So, and I know this is gonna hurt some of y'all, but I'm just gonna start over. Pick those eyes out and lightly condition the clay. Harry says, I started a macrame piece today with leather cord. I'll have to go back and watch it again. Oh, good. So, and Gloria says, love them. Oh, good. All right. So, if you don't want to watch this part, you don't have to watch this part. Um, you can watch the other day and you'll probably get the same amount of information, but we're just going to hang out and make stuff, right? All right. So I took my polymer clay and I'm lightly conditioning it. I preconditioned this before and really worked it, but it's been sitting out and it is not as tender as it could be, which is okay. I don't want it to be too soft, but also at the same time, I don't want it to be too stiff because it can cause cracking. And I don't necessarily want that cracking to be a problem. All right. And I go through step by step on how to make these faces. If you're on our Patreon, and you are a Patreon member, I did a tutorial, step-by-step tutorial on how to do this. So, and it's all written out. So if you need those instructions, you can join there and you can get those instructions if you want written instructions. I'm going to put this on this clay scraper so that it can, in theory, I can move it around. And then I'm going to take these eyes. William mentioned that these eye beads are now in the online store. They didn't have any other colors, so I only have this one color. But now that I know that they exist in the real world, I'll be on the hunt for them. All right. Now I missed that cat. I can always just make another one. I'm going to use this wooden board to help me roll my clay out. And the reason why I'm doing this and not on the glass is because I was slipping and sliding and I wasn't getting enough traction. So I'm just rolling out some coils. I made the face. I impressed the eye cavity and the mouth cavity and put the beads in for the eyes. If you wanted to, you could use these glass beads for your eyes instead. They're a wee bit small, so just be mindful of that. And the next thing I'm going to do is pinch that kind of nose and layer this in for the eyelid. I'm going to bring some of my sculpting tools that I use regularly and use those because these ones are okay, but I really prefer to use the African porcupine quill. And I also like the sculpting on a subway tile because it has a little bit of weight to it. So I can, I don't know, it just feels, I'm just used to it. Now, I knew somebody who used to use the back of a glass sun catcher for their, to hold their work so that they could bring it up closer to themselves. All right. So what is everybody having for dinner? I made hot dish again because I had that in the cupboard. And I feel like we're going to be eating leftovers of that. And maybe a salad, so it's not quite so heavy. But so yeah, so basically that's what I'm doing. I'm just adding different coils of clay and smoothing the seams out as I go. And this is pizza and salad for dinner here. Oh, good. Yeah, I was craving pizzas the other night, but we did not get pizza. I don't actually remember what we got instead or what we made. So if you have any great big creases like that, you can always take a little bit of water and gently spritz it on there and use that to blend it in if you want, and it will make it super smooth. It's like a burnishing action. Susan says I got bean soup and cornbread out of the freezer. That sounds great. Bonnie says I have lemon ravioli in the refrigerator and some frozen peas. I'm hoping it will be okay with olive oil and spices. Sounds good. Amanda says I made roasted chicken with gravy, mashed potatoes, steamed broccoli, and cauliflower. That also sounds good. Marianne says Italian meatballs and salad, apple pie for dessert. Gumnut says that they're having kebabs for dinner. Karen says spaghetti with homemade Roma tomato cream sauce. That sounds great. I'm excited for our garden this year. I think I'm not going to have any time for it, but I'm going to try to do a small, maybe a container garden because I love like cherry tomatoes. There's something about like summer, and I don't know about y'all, but they were kind of expensive this year in the store. And those that basically grow like a weed here. And so I think I'm gonna do a couple of those. I'm not gonna get hog wild because I know that this is gonna be a busy summer for us. So I don't want to get it to a point because I did a garden one year and I put all this time and energy when it was kind of slow in the early spring. And then when summer came around, I just couldn't keep up. And like this last year, our flower beds looked terrible because I was so busy doing everything. And I didn't really have time. Bunny says it's National Pie Day. Yeah, I saw that. I was gonna do a pie tutorial, and then I decided not to. And one of my friends, Jean from Beads of Courage, her mom was really into baking, and so they came out with a cookbook that was all about pies, and it would help raise money for the Beads of Courage. Money said the animals always eat everything in the garden. That's another concern. When we lived on 90 acres, we had a huge garden, but we had to put an electric fence around it. And even that, it didn't work. One year, the deer got stuck in it and it pulled it and it basically sheared everything off at um, at the ground. So we spent all this money on these plants and they basically got ruined. And this is at minimum, we try to grow cherry tomatoes, peppers, and some herbs. One year we grew a ton of green peppers, and we had so much that we put them in the freezer. And I don't know what happened, but it made the entire freezer, everything taste like green bell peppers. And it was kind of gross. So, like, even my ice cream tasted like green bell peppers. And I was like, I don't know about this. All right, so I'm basically, if you saw the other video, I'm basically fleshing out the face by adding lips, and I might go and do this again, this part. I might add some more lips to this. But basically, what it is you're coil building. You build snakes, and then you smooth down one side of that snake to attach it for one, but also to build up those kind of creases in the face, like lips and noses and different things like that. And this one, it's just these little things, like you just have to kind of maneuver it. Now that's also a nice, if you want to build in teeth, you can also build in teeth by putting them in first. I usually, when I do that, I will bake the teeth separately and then go and sculpt on top of the teeth. Because if you don't, what can happen is then you just kind of mush it in and then it doesn't really look like anything. It kind of gets squashed and it loses its definition. So I will bake I bake the teeth first and then I'll build on top of that. And I'm using the blunt end of this tool as a shaping tool to kind of push the clay around. And remember, this is deep enough that you can insert these tools and really get in there and build that illusion of depth. And one of the things that I like to do is I build that kind of cleft of the lip and then push that down and then build it back up. And then it has that kind of, I don't know what those are called. It does kind of like those peaks in the lip. But anyway, so I'm basically sculpting a face that we did the other day. And if you want step-by-step tutorial on how to do that, you can watch that video again. You can also join the Patreon, and that has written instructions. And what I would say is that if anybody does it, just, it takes practice too. Um, and it's intimidating sometimes. It can be intimidating if you don't have that practice or those muscle memories in. And so I'm going to do some cheeks and then I'm going to start embedding stuff. How about it? Yeah, I kind of want pie, but I'm trying also not to. I get in the habit now where I just, if I want something to eat, I just go and I get it. And now my pants get tight. So that is not awesome. And also, I should also say that if you want to make it more fantastical by doing it kind of like where you do shapes and you don't blend them in, you can do that as well. But I just have it just depends on your style, right? So if you want it to be more whimsical and fantastical, you can do that as well and build different textures in, and shapes. And, But basically, we're going from the general to the specific. So if you ever wonder about my kind of sculpting technique, um, that is how you do it. You kind of block out the rough shapes and then you kind of build it up. And then you refine those shapes and blend things in. So when I'm drawing, it's kind of the same way that I draw. I'll start with a loose sketch of what I'm doing, and I'll start blocking out the different forms. I worked with a really wonderful drawing instructor named Elena Sisto, and she's a very talented artist. And one of the things that she would do is she would do point plot, would plot all the points of this is the face, this is us tall. You don't even look at a person like a person. You look at a person as shapes. So what that basically means is you mark the point which is the highest point, you mark the points which are the widest points, and then you kind of build a coffin like structure. So it's like you, if this is the top of the head, you would mark this as the top and this is the bottom, and then you create these shapes, and then within that structure, then you can kind of visually compare where, um, say, the eyes hit here. You would then make a point. You can draw a line out and flesh things out like that. So I don't know if that made any sense. It makes more sense when you see it drawn out, but it's a way of drawing that is less about kind of those things that we think we know about anatomy, and it's actually just about what we actually see, as opposed to what we know about the body. Because I think it's good to have both, but it can sometimes what we know about things informs how things are visually represented. Um, And so there's weird things that happen. Like Donatello, he made these sculptures called the Zucconi, and basically they were called pumpkin heads. And the thing is that he knew that because they of where they would be seen, you'd be looking up at them. And there's this thing called foreshortening that happens. So if you look at something from way far down and you're looking up, what happens is it makes the head almost look like a pinprick, and it can do these weird visual distortions. So instead of doing that, what he did is he exaggerated the heads and made them look bigger. So if you looked at the statues from ground level, they would look like their heads were like massive. But if you looked at them from that perspective, they would look actually more proportional. So sometimes you have to do little things to, like little tricks and illusions to get what you want. All right. So this is pretty rough, but I'm not going to stay here all night sculpting because I know y'all have other stuff to do besides just hanging out and doing that. I started a new series of paintings and I kind of am eager to get into that. And then my library just got the next in the Dresden Files. Um, there are so many of those Dresden File books by Jim Butcher, and I just breezed through them. So I got to a certain point, and I was like, then I had to stop, but they just got them in, so I downloaded them all, and I'm gonna enjoy listening to that. I finished that one Hellbent book, and that was pretty good. I was gonna make some paintings based off of it, but then I was like, they would be a little bit sexy time, so I don't know about that. All right. Lance says I feel called out. LOL. I needed new clothes, but pie is good. I as well like pie. I really like pie. Um, Bonnie says my favorite part at the Louvre was the statues and sculptures. Oh, good. All right, so I've got my face that we did the sculpture for the face. And then I have these budding branch pendants that we made earlier. I've got my kind of all like tool, and I'm going to use that to make holes. And then I'm going to just gently twist and rotate this. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up a hole. Because if you just dig this in, it may distort it. So it's good to build that hole in there. And I don't want to squash all the detail that I just worked on for the last 30 minutes or so. All right. And then I'm going to take a little bit of clay and I'm going to mush it up until it's very sticky and gum-like. And then I'm going to roll it into a little bit of a teardrop shape. And I'm going to insert it in the hole and use this tool to backfill this in. Basically, if you've ever looked at a doll and you know how they have the doll's hair where it's got like plugs, that's how you're basically doing this, except you're using, instead of hair, like uh, like a fake hair, you're going to use these these wire components that we made. All right. What do y'all think of that? Is that cool or like weird? It can be weird. I'm okay with weird. And so you can build up different kind of shapes this way. And I mean, it's the thing is like we, as makers and as jewelry makers, there's a lot of times when our skill sets are very much interconnected with other disciplines. So, like if we wanted to make, sculptures, we can make sculptures. It's just a matter of upping the scale. Or if you wanted to turn this into a jewelry component, you could definitely do that as well. Now, if you're really concerned about this being coming out, you can put a dab of liquid polymer that you put in like a syringe, or use a little bit of paste polymer, which is basically just a little bit of liquid polymer that's been mixed with clay to make a paste like texture. And you can put that on the ends and basically glue it in place while you embed it. I would probably, if I was doing this with a sculpture, I'd probably do this a lot more. Like I'd put way more in this. All right. Now, if you don't like the way that the wire looks, like say you want to bend this so that it's bent up a little bit or something, what I would recommend doing is baking it first and then going back and revisiting it after it's cooled, and then manipulate the wire. Because if you try to manipulate the wire, for one, what's going to happen is it's going to start messing. It's going to start pulling up the wherever you've attached it. So I think that it's better, like if you want to have a major, massive change, what I would do is just pull this out and do that, make your own thing first, the branch component, and then go back in and go back in and reinsert them, but I would be mindful of that so that you don't accidentally rip a bunch of your sculpture apart. Because you can do that where if you start messing around with this, it can start messing with this and it'll pop the eye out, and then you have to basically start over. Which is not the end of the world. Like I showed earlier, if you're not happy with a sculpture or you want it to look different, it's just some polymer and some wire and some beads, you know? It's not the end of the world. We can start over. We have the ability to begin again and make something new and different. All right. So I would probably, if I did this, and you know what? Here, I'll show another thing. So I've got these dagger beads. I've got some wire. I tend not to want to work on my tools when I've been working with polymer. So this is a good time to wash your hands because sometimes that polymer can get onto your tool handle, and then over time it can eat away at the plastic of your handle. So if you want, you wipe down your tools after. But have you ever noticed that? Like sometimes the handles will get sticky, and that could be why. So, I mean, I could do this all day, building sculptures with y'all, but yeah, I'm sure y'all have other stuff to do. Or not. I don't know your life. But I took these dagger beads, and I'm just gonna roll this up at the end and tighten this up just a wee bit. You know what though? After I got to a certain point, and now we were talking about how my pants are getting tight from having too much pie and chips and stuff. I just now wear sweatpants all the time. So that's really fun when I have a formal event and I'm like, oh, sweatpants, dress code, and the dress code. And then I'll take this all shape and embed this in here. Oop, Barnaby, he wanted to come up and say hi to his peeps. I don't know if Susanna's watching today. He's like, Cinnamon, are you there, Cinnamon? He's in my lap, y'all. All right, so I've got this. I'm gonna fill that hole back in. He's like, I didn't see her. All right, and put this in here like so. And you can just keep adding and adding and adding. The thing about if you just embed stuff in and if you don't put a lip on it, it can pull right out. So that's why we put that wire on the end of this dagger bead, because if I just stuck the dagger bead straight into the clay, unless it hooked into the holes in the clay, it would just kind of pull right out. And then whenever you're going to do your finishing work, sometimes you have to be kind of aggressive with your brush strokes and you're like messing around, scrubbing that brush in there, that would just pop right out. And you don't necessarily want that to happen. Facebook user says Raven is here watching with me. Meow. I know a couple of people named Raven, so I'm guessing that's a cat, but I know some people named Raven. So, um, hello, cat or human, either way. Bonnie says, I miss my cat, but I don't miss cleaning the litter box or the dead mice at my door. I kind of sometimes think about getting a cat for the cottage so that we don't have any mice problems and then take care of it, take care of business. Um, but I don't clean the litter box. So William cleans the litter box unless I absolutely have to. But we've been thinking about getting new kittens. Because Paolo and Babette's birthday was St. Patrick's Day. So I think it might be good, you know, if they had, I don't know, pay honor to Paolo and Babette and their birthday time. But I don't know. I haven't really seen it. I see older cats, which I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to getting an older cat. The only thing though is that they're not always compatible if you have younger or if you have cats already. Sometimes if you have little cats, you can kind of uh, acclimate them easier to a household with pre-existing cats. So I don't know, we've been thinking about it. I miss Pablo and Babette a lot. Um, I mean, Barnaby and Gilbert, they're good, but they are not the same. And I think it's one that and all cats are different, so don't get me wrong. But also, like when I had cancer, Pablo and Babette, they were there with me the whole time. And so, like, when I was recovering from surgery, they flanked me on either side and they had a purring festival. And, some of the hardest times of our lives, like when the pandemic happened and we really did not know how things would go, I had my cats with me and they kind of helped me and comforted me. And they could tell that I was upset and didn't really know like what we would do if we had to close the store or so they were there the whole time and we had been through a lot together, so I miss them. And uh Barnaby and Gilbert, they're kind of coming into their own a little bit more. Their personalities are developing kind of independently of how Paolo and Babette were, but I don't know. Bunny says, I got my cat right after my cancer, and you're absolutely right about the comfort they provide. Yeah. I don't know how I would have done it because I didn't really know that many people in the area when we moved here. And so it was really hard. And, even with my family, I didn't really talk to my family that much when we first moved here. And so I was by myself pretty much with William. His family helped out a lot. Don't get me wrong, but it's different when you don't have your own people, So that was hard. Um, and I think having Pablo and Babette definitely made it a lot easier. I shouldn't say easier, but they helped me um, live, or they help me get through it and provide that comfort and support that is sometimes hard. And also, people are complicated. I mean, not to say that cats aren't complicated too, but they're pretty. At least my cats were very vocal about their needs. If they were hungry, they'd tell you they're hungry. Um, like humans, though, sometimes I don't know. I don't even know y'all. Too much code words. All right, Seb. y'all get the point. We could do this all night and then some more tomorrow and the next day and the next day and just build and build and build until the end of the world. So and also I don't know about this one now that I've added it, but there you go. So this is a way that you can build and incorporate your wire creations into your polymer clay. Um, and if you wanted to, this is another separate project, but if you wanted to, you could also, if you, I'm just going to take this out and do a demo real quick. If you wanted to, you can also take the clay and smash this out until it's really sticky. And you're going to make a coil. You have to get it really sticky though and smashy. And then you're going to smash it out between your fingers so it looks like you ran over a snake. And then put this over your wire and you kind of wrap it around your armature, your wire armature. And then you go back in and you squeeze the dickens out of it so that it conforms around your wire and you don't have a bunch of loose gaps in underneath your clay. Basically, you're getting rid of any air bubbles and really marrying the polymer clay onto your wire armature so that it really gets in there. And it also helps have tools that you can press in like so. And you could do little caps and, make it really a sculptural piece. I will say that if you intend to use this for like jewelry purposes, you might want to do this with an epoxy putty because it cures harder. And if you're doing something where it doesn't have a lot of structure, it's fine. Or if it doesn't get a lot of like motion, you could be fine. Like if you're making earring components, I will say that it gets kind of fragile. So with just polymer and wire, it is stronger than if it's just polymer by itself because it will keep its shape because of the armature. But if you're thinking about, you have to kind of think about like durability. So it might be better to get like some epoxy clay and use that because it's a little bit more, when it cures a little bit harder. Um, and so if you need something where you don't want the wire exposed, you can do it like that and basically cover the wire armature with a clay of your choosing. But again, it's all about problem solving. So if you have something that has a lot, like it's going to take a lot of like motion. So if you have it like the bail, I would probably leave the bail. Either you have to beef it up really thick, or you have to if you beef it up really thick, or you leave it as exposed wire and then you put your point of connection on that exposed wire, it's a little bit stronger than if you put a thin veneer over your wire. Unless it's still good to use some polymer, both save money and to make it less weight before you add epoxy sculpt on top. Epoxy sculpt isn't too heavy, but you're also working in very thin veneers on something like this. It's like a thin skin that's covering it. So we'll make it stronger, and it shouldn't add too much weight. But Also, I don't know. And if you're gonna make it super bulky, if this was like a big sculpture, I don't know. Like if this was a great big sculpture, I guess you could do, I don't know. If it's a great big sculpture, I would do like a paper mache or something underneath. And then for the details, I would go in and do the epoxy sculpt. Or if I was going to make something out of polymer, I could take the polymer. This is, I was just worried about earrings. Oh, it should be fine. But I mean, with earrings, you could do it in polymer and it should be fine. Because it's not going to get a lot of like play, you know, it's not going to get a lot of like, unless you like go into the roller derby or something, it's, then it should be polymer and wire should be fine. And what I'm basically doing is whenever I'm breaking off one of those little balls and attaching it to the wire, I'm just kind of pressing it so you don't see any of the wire exposed underneath. And then you just keep continuing and building that up. That's another option. This is the way that you would do an armature with like regular sculpture building, is you build an armature of wire and get those gestural forms down. And then you build it up in either strips or in coils, basically like you're adding a musculature over the skeleton. Anywhere that if you had a great big voluminous void and you needed it to be hollow or lightweight, you would use aluminum foil and ball that up. And when you ball it up, you also don't want to ball it up too tight. You want it to be somewhat floofy in the sense that if you ball it up super tight and compress it, because I've seen that as a viral thing on the internet now, um, of people smashing the aluminum foil ball until it becomes perfectly smooth, and it will compress and add weight. So you also want those kind of nooks and crannies, because those nooks and crannies are going to cling on to the clay, and it will help hold the clay better. And I've done different tests where I've taken clay that I've built onto a smooth ball as opposed to a rough kind of gently smashed ball. And I will say that the clay that's on the smoother subsurface um, just basically shears right off. So if you have a little bit of texture for it to grip onto, you're going to have a little bit more success, I feel, than if you make it like a super smooth kind of shape armature. You want those areas for it to grip onto. And then if you wanted to, you can go in and texture this. So whenever you're happy with where you're at, say you made this and you're like so happy with it, what you can then do is take like this, it's almost like a razor blade, but not as sharp, and just go through like this, and it will create kind of a twisted look. I don't know if you can see that or not. Or if you wanted to, and you had like a rock off the side, you can take a rock and kind of stipple it. This is like a texture for gripping, and you can go over this and use it as a texture tool. Remember, you don't want to squash your texture, so you have to be kind of mindful of that. Because if you run over the texture multiple times, it can kind of take away that texture. it can muddle the texture. So if you mess up, smooth it out again and then run over it again with a fresh run. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. If you don't like the look of the naked wire, this is a way that you can kind of dress that up and create a little bit more visual heft, for one. And then number two is, if you wanted to, you can really do some fun kind of, cool textures and stuff. And you can make it look like a branch, like an actual branch, or you can make it look like coral. If you wanted to add little nubbins, you can add little sculptural elements where you take little balls of clay and attach them in certain areas. And really have fun sculpting these branch-like forms. And then whenever you go to add your, if you go in and add a layer of paint to bring out that texture, it will really make it sing. And you can do some cool things where if you darken certain areas, it makes it look a little bit more recessed. So you can do it where if you want this to look more exaggerated in like a deeper shape, you would take and like when you would paint it, you just leave some of that darker paint in those recessed areas and it would look more exaggerated. So that's kind of another idea that you can do. So you get kind of like I think you get a lot of techniques out of this. I mean, in this video, we recapped some of the polymer clay sculpting. And if you wanted to embed this, what I would do is I would bake this first, 275 for every 1/4 inch thickness. So I would probably be done in 15 minutes, but I would probably hedge my bets and do it for a full 30. And then stick it into this raw clay, because if you do it while it's still raw, you're going to be squashing it like up here, and all that texture that you added is going to basically get smushed. So if you want that texture to be really crisp and clean, bake that first and then embed it. All right. Marianne says use gray beads, and this technique could be for pussy willows. Yeah, if you wanted to do pussy willows, you could easily take what's called a rabbit skin glue. And if you took like a wooden bead and put this on there in that shape, and then what I would do is lightly sand the wooden beads and then paint it with a light layer of rabbit skin glue. Let that dry completely, and then dip it into this stuff called flocking. When I was in college, I used to flock everything because I was so enamored with this velveteen texture. And then you just put that on there, and then when it never really dries, so you kind of have to use this. Um, it will always be tacky under that layer, just so you know. And it's also one of those things where it's not necessarily for jewelry, maybe, because it can rub off and you don't want like flocking all over. But I guess if the adhesion's good enough and the glue gets dry enough, it could be cool. But you could take this and then it would look just like a pussy willow. So there you go. Lena said, nice branches to match your branch laser pendant. Yeah. All right. So today we talked about making these pendants, the budding branch pendant. And then we did another refresher on face sculpting. Those eyes are now in the Allegory Gallery website. That's allegorygallery.com. And we also talked about embedding stuff in clay. Then we talked about using the budding branch wire as an armature for polymer clay. And I might go ahead and do a couple versions of this for my own particular use. And then, yeah, so we went through a lot of things. I probably won't finish this, to be honest. I'll probably just squash it up again. Um, but I might make some of these. I'm interested in this flavor. And yeah, so I might go off screen. I might make a pair of earrings or something. Um, and we'll see. Right. So I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm not going to flip the camera around because we've already been talking for 2 hours and you don't need to see my face again. But I just wanted to say thank you again for all of your support and generosity. We really appreciate all of you out there. We really believe in the community that we're building together, based on creativity and mutual respect. And so, thank you so much for being a part of that and making it possible. We could not do this without all of you out there. So, thank you so much. I also wanted to say that if you ever have any questions or need anything, you can always email us at info@allegorygallery.com. That's one of the best places to reach us. And William, he checks his emails pretty much every day, but um, depending on the day and how busy things are, sometimes it takes a day or two. And he also likes to research answers. So that's another thing. And yeah, so if you ever need us, just email us and we will definitely try to be in contact with all of you. We hope you have a great rest of your evening. We'll be back tomorrow with some more gemstone goodies. And I will try to post the finished earrings after. So keep an eye. I'll probably post it on my personal, but I'll ask William to share it into the business page. And yeah, so I'll talk to y'all later. Okay, see ya. Bye bye.